It is Wednesday, November 16th, 2018. Oh, I'm sorry, November 14th. Oh, I'm going to have to correct that. November 14th, 2018. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And I'm just going to start off by saying that this has been a very, very, very interesting day. I got some stuff done that I had intended on doing, something completely inexplicable, and I don't know, I had slight hints it may happen yesterday. It happened today, and many of you are probably still reeling, if not crying, maybe contemplating Harry Carey. But please, you can take your head out of the microwave. You can quit taste testing the barrel of your firearm, and yeah, you don't need to do that shit. This shit ain't over. Shit ain't even close to being over. Anyway, as far as it was a really good get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday. So despite the complete and total freak out this morning, and I got to tell you, I was really, really lucky. I did a cash out a little while back, and so like reflecting back on how much I would have lost if I'd waited until today, it was a good move. So anyway, yeah, on to jiu-jitsu. I had the most confusing class that I've had for quite a while, and it was mostly because I don't know, something about the position. I was having a lot of difficulty with it. We were doing a guillotine choke, but it was a little bit different in that it was, like where you have one arm shooting over the shoulder around the head, right? And then you have the other grabbing the hand and like pulling it up into their throat from under their arm. And I don't know. I was having a whole lot of trouble with it. But to kind of counterbalance that, I had a really interesting set of rolling sessions, and I feel kind of bad because I did mop the ground with this kid pretty effortlessly today. And of course, he was a white belt. I think he might have had one stripe. So again, feel terribly guilty, but I gotta say there was a time that I was treated thusly, and to tell you the truth, I didn't really take the initiative. I really let him kind of lead the dance. Where do you want to go with it, big boy? And I was just reacting to it, and I'll admit it, I did muscle once or twice, but as far as establishing dominance and establishing the position, I think I did that very, very well. I did one screw up. This is really cool. Like, it was the first like completely legit arm bar that I'd ever gotten, and it was funny because like when I was setting it up, I didn't even think at the initial moment that I was setting it up, I wasn't thinking, I'm going to put this guy in a fucking arm bar. No, it was kind of weird. I had to slip off to his side, and I had my arm over his, and I was like on his hip with him on his back, and so I snuggled my hip really, really tight to him, and kind of started to push him over, and at that point I was just like, if I just reverse the arm position on this, step over his head, and then swing my other leg up, I could probably armbar this guy. And so that's exactly what I did. It was really weird for me because I had enough time to think about it, basically, because I didn't know if I had been rolling against any of the higher belts in class, I would not have had that time to think or reflect on my actions or anything like that. So like I said, it was one of those unique opportunities, and I think the next time that I do go to class, I am going to work on just grabbing higher belts to work with, because I'm sure it's at least partially educational for the guys that I'm rolling with, but I don't think it's challenging enough to my skill, and I am starting to feel like I'm getting a little bit of a stride, and so I do want to kind of push and test it, and increase and grow it, and so I feel kind of guilty for picking the 2 white belts, but honestly I was kind of tired, so but the first guy that I rolled with, we were doing a positional sparring where I was in turtle at first. The guy on the bottom is in turtle, and the guy on top is in whatever position. Preferably the one that they were really focusing on was the guillotine with the hand up under the chin already. But the guy didn't do that. So anyway, I didn't either, and so when I was in turtle, I was looking at his position and I was looking at my position, and he dropped to his knees, and I was just like, oh, I could do something here. So I took my right hand, because he was off to my right side. I took my right hand and I reached under and I grabbed the outside of his knee, his outside, his right knee. And I grabbed his pants, and then I grabbed his sleeve with my left hand, and I just pressured into his shoulder, pressured into him off to the right hand side, and just like basically pulled his leg and his arm out from under him while I was pushing it over. And I swung my leg over and got to full mount. It was really cool. But I mean, it's very few times that I've been getting those kind of moments. At least for like the last couple months, it seems like I've finally started to get back into some sort of a stride, And it's been kind of ebb and flow for me. But today it really seemed to come together when I was rolling. And yeah, despite the fact, I was going against guys that were much less skilled than I was, and probably about 50 pounds lighter than I was. They were nonetheless wiry and quick, so and youthful. I could have probably fathered both of them. Nonetheless, it was a lot of fun, and when we did the lineups at the end, and we all slap hands, good job, both of them thanked me. So that tells me that I did something right, And the one guy at the end, I was trying to convey to him that jiu-jitsu isn't really about strength. It's about body position and pressure. And so I when I had him in he was in turtle, and I was on his hip, and I said, just give into the pressure. Feel where the pressure is and just give into it. And so the first time, he just let his arm out from under him, slapped down onto his left shoulder, and basically kind of flicked me off. And he saw the motion that he made when he flipped over onto his back, right? And I said, all right, now you're ready for it. Now you understand what I'm talking about with pressure. Let's try it again. So I got back on his hip, and I just started to put a little bit of pressure on him. He immediately threw that arm out, slapped onto his left side, and swung his right leg or left leg up and over my back and pulled me right into his guard. And I'm like, there you go. That's jiu-jitsu right there. So yeah, it was very interesting. I pulled some really interesting shit too. Like the first guy that I rolled with, I did something really weird to get him. Like instead of rolling over on him, I brought one of my legs up, my left leg up, and I actually stepped back, to where like I was starting to stand up a little bit. But then I started pushing backwards while he was still on my back, and I had his outer leg and his outer arm. I had his right sleeve and his right leg. And I just like reverse smash past him, where I got my hips up under myself, and like pulled his right leg in and his right sleeve in, and then just pushed over, and I had his ankle in a really weird position, so I tried to like thrust up a little bit so his leg could flip out from under both of us before we collapsed, and I broke his leg. I was successful, no broken leg, but yeah, I managed to get a full mount from there too. It was really a lot of fun today, and I did take his back twice, so that was another new one. I have yet to get anybody's back until today, and I got it twice. And I started feeling like, I could really take this guy anywhere I want to go. So I just like let him push me around, like when I was in Turtle, I'm like, okay, just go for it, man. And so I was trying to work off of his pressure rather than providing my own. And I did what I had instructed him to do, where I dropped to the shoulder, right? And then I trapped his leg and got him in half guard. And he was trying to keep his right leg out from my putting him in guard, and I just had him with my left arm on his knee, and was keeping him from lifting it out, and I just kind of pushed into him a little bit and snuck the leg out around full guard. But yeah, it was very instructive, for me in that. Again, I had the opportunity to take the time and kind of try and plan my next move before it was happening, and that's one thing I don't really get with the higher belts. I mean, because I got no time. It's practically all survival for me. But yeah, I imagine that once I start getting further into the habit, and like I said, I think I want to break away from addressing lower belts and start going with higher belt guys, because like I said, I feel like I do need to be pushing the upper end of my limits rather than just playing around with getting my timing down with the lower belts. Anyway, it is with that I want to go ahead and throw down into some music, and as far as what we're going to talk about today, I'm still at a loss. I'm sure I'll figure it out, but I'm having trouble finding my windows here. Where's all my windows, man? Where the hell is my... Wow, that is so weird. It's like, for some reason it disappeared all my... Oh, there it is. Ha ha ha. Let's see here. Expand it. Open. Open. Show me. Ah, there we go. Beautiful. Yeah, there was something earlier where I was working out, and that's another thing. I think that's probably part of what's been making a difference with my jiu-jitsu lately is I bought this orbital rower. It's not anything nice or anything like that, but it is functional. It does the job. And before I've been going to jiu-jitsu, I've been warming up with that. And man, during warm-ups, the few that I did get in today, I was a lot quicker. I felt a lot snappier. It was pretty cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into that music. And I did get my view up so I can actually see what the fuck I'm doing here. And let's see. That one seems pretty good. Let's do it. Exodus, Fabulous Disaster, First Dance, here on Coin Metal. And that was Static X with Machine. And I was going to let it run, but it was only because I couldn't find my interface, but I found it. And so we don't have to do that. Anywho, yeah, I've got a couple articles that I felt were prudent. And we might actually get into a PDF concerning some like wormhole stuff or some tokenization stuff on the Bitcoin Cash side of things, but I'm not entirely certain that we'll have enough time to get into that, especially with this one right here. And it's on CoinDesk.com. The crypto market just fell to a new 2018 low. And this is by Sam Omet, November 14th, 2018 at 10:41 UTC. So yes, penis. Bitcoin sank to its lowest price in over a year on Wednesday, with the prices of other major cryptocurrencies following alongside it. As of press time, Bitcoin is trading at 55.2592, more than 12% decline on the day. In the latest sign that volatility around the world's largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization has returned with a vengeance. Indeed, Bitcoin's collective market cap dropped below the $100 billion level for the first time since November 12th of last year, according to CoinDesk's Crypto Economics Explorer (CEX). In the past 12 hours alone, the total capitalization of the cryptocurrency market fell from roughly $210 billion to where it stands now, $180 billion. Today's 15% depreciation has led the market to its lowest value since October 31st of last year, CoinMarketCap data reveals. Other major cryptocurrencies are reporting declines in excess of 10% on the day, including Ethereum, XRP, and Bitcoin Cash, the latter of which is gearing up for a contentious hard fork on November 15th. Notably, market data indicates that in light of today's market drop, XRP, as of the time of this writing, has the second largest market capitalization for cryptocurrencies, surpassing Ethereum. USDT, the stablecoin known more commonly as Tether, saw a notable drop in its price to a low of 95 cents on crypto exchange Kraken, which offers one of the few trading pairs of the token against the US dollar. Tether, among other stablecoins, is intended to hold parity against the US dollar, and data from CoinMarketCap shows that the token is trading in the 96 to 97 cent range. Because of the dip in USDT, the Bitcoin premium on exchanges like Bitfinex, which trades against USDT, has risen more than $300. In other words, a single unit of Bitcoin can now be purchased for $55.57 on Coinbase, a regulated exchange traded against US dollars, while the same unit costs $58.70 USDT on Bitfinex. I've said this for a while now, that stablecoins are just a bunch of bullshit. That basically they're giving you something other than US dollars to trade. Now, how that's going to affect the actual volume of US dollars in the market, it's not going to at all. You're not actually trading it for US dollars. You're trading it for a quote-unquote stable coin instead. So if you want to take advantage of the actual differential, you need to be trading in a pairing between Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever and US dollars. That'll give you a true indicator of what it's actually worth, because you're actually moving a volume of US dollars as opposed to an abstraction of US dollars that could in fact be fictional, counterfeit. I'm just amazed, honestly, with the lack of people pursuing USDT and other quote-unquote stable coins, and there's like 5 or 6 of them, I guess, and being circulated in US markets. But I'm just amazed that there's not more question about these. I don't care who is behind it. They are all going to be debased. There is no reason to circulate an abstraction of value other than the fact that you do not have the thing of value. If you do not have the thing of value, you can circulate as much made-up things of value as you want. You can just wave that magic wand. Say, oh yeah, we did the work, but it's associated with this transaction in our database. And what shocks me is people that are supposedly knowledgeable about cryptocurrencies actually accepted it. I mean, sure, it gives us a nice little vehicle to trade around in, but it's not the actual thing. It's not an actual exchange rate pairing. It's Bitcoin versus some abstraction of possibly fictional value. Very, very sad. Very, very sad. But anyway, a lot of these articles don't actually speculate about what might cause that their drop, and there was just a mild hint of it in that last article, but I don't think that people are really paying attention to it closely enough to really understand it. And I think that this would help out a little bit. This one's on BitcoinExchangeGuide.com. Bitcoin hash rate falls from 57 to 47 quintillion among profitability concerns and BCH hash war. And this is by the Bitcoin Exchange Guide News Team, November 12, 2018. November 12th, 2018. Keep that in mind. It seems that the Bitcoin hash rate is experiencing a decline in the last days. According to data provided by blockchain.com, the Bitcoin hash rate, taking into account the 7 days average, if we see the daily hash rate fluctuation, it is also possible to see a decline, but it is not as hard in the other chart. On November 4th, the Bitcoin network had a hash rate of 54 million terahashes per second. On November 11th, the number went down to 46 million terahashes per second. This is similar to the hash rate that the network had back in the beginning of August. The hash rate reduction might be influenced by two things: Bitcoin price operating relatively stable, close to 6,400, leaves miners with a very tight profit or not profit at all. Compared to the earnings that miners had at the beginning of the year, to keep operations with this pace might not be profitable anymore. Price, that is, with this price. Another reason could be related to Bitcoin Cash's hash rate war that is now taking place. Bitcoin Cash is going to be performing an upgrade on November 15th. Some Bitcoin miners could be moving to Bitcoin Hash in order to support one of two proposals, Bitcoin SV or Bitcoin ABC. Craig Wright commented about this, quote, "When we move our hash off of Bitcoin into Bitcoin Cash, oh, I forgot to say that we are there too. The Bitcoin mining hash drops and suddenly Bitcoin mining is more profitable. Stay on Bitcoin Cash as we will and lose big time." As we will and lose big time. Think of this as a short-term gift to mining Bitcoin. Yeah, whatever. Bitcoin Cash hash rate could also fall because some of the hash rate is expected to go to Bitcoin SV, the proposal supported by Mr. Wright. But instead, it will not just chain split. It will not be just a chain split. It will be considered as a 51% attack on Bitcoin Cash, as he said. Apparently, the Bitcoin SV supporters believe that if they have more than 51% of the hash rate of the network, miners would switch directly to Bitcoin SV. However, users can decide where to move and who to follow, whether the Bitcoin ABC proposal or Bitcoin SV. Miners in the cryptocurrency space follow price and profitability. BSV, for example, would just get between 10 and 20% of Bitcoin Cash hash rate. However, the difficulty to mine in that network adjusts itself by block. According to trust nodes, it would be possible to find one Bitcoin Cash block per hour using 20% of the current Bitcoin Cash hash rate. Each of the coins could be sold at a price of $450, meaning that the miner would receive $5,600 per block. At the same time, this 20% of the network will also be getting one Bitcoin Cash SV block per hour, which will be worth $1,200 if each BSV is sold for $100. Nevertheless, once the first block is mined, the difficulty starts adjusting. If Calvin Ayre, one of the supporters of Bitcoin SV, takes the decision to send all of the hash power to BSV, they will be getting fewer funds if they split in this way compared to the profits they would receive if they followed the most profitable network. In Bitcoin Cash, the hash rate would also be reduced if miners decide to back the new proposals. That means that the difficulty in Bitcoin Cash would be reduced and become even more profitable than Bitcoin. In this way, some Bitcoin hash rate could move to Bitcoin Cash, and some Bitcoin Cash miners could move to BSV. This could end up with a hash rate drop in Bitcoin's network, and this is something that can be seen even now, since the hash rate in Bitcoin's network reached an all-time high at the end of August. At that time, the hash rate surpassed 61 million terahashes per second at the end of October. The network has reached the lowest point in months after being close to 40 million terahashes per second. Wow, that's a pretty significant drop. So you gotta wonder, we've got this intertwining gig going on. And I did notice something that that's interesting too. And we might open that too. Anyway, I'd been noticing a couple things. I saw on my Twitter feed that there was this phantom 15 exahashes that apparently was jumping on and off of the Bitcoin network. And I had my suspicions about what that was all about. But I think that might have been like the testing for this whole fucking Bitcoin Cash boondoggle. And I think it is going to get interesting that a lot of the hash rate that is going to Bitcoin is going to be switching over to Bitcoin Cash, and just to participate in the competition. And I think that's something that I don't know. I think that's something that people forget about Bitcoin in mining Bitcoin, is that, you know, there's this thing about Roger Ver and Bitcoin.com shifting their pool over to supporting just Bitcoin Cash. And some people were whinging about that on Twitter. And while I'm not saying it's quote unquote right in the context of how people's hash rate is being directed, I can say it is right from a greater standpoint of the network. You know, and I'm sure there is something in the end user license agreement that says that they would be acting on the best, what they saw as the best benefit to both the pool and Bitcoin Cash, or Bitcoin, or the network in general. Like if there were a similar contentious fork going on the Bitcoin network, the same people that I heard whining about it today would not be whining about it. They would be like, oh yeah, cool, he's supporting our version of it, or whatever. They wouldn't say anything about it. But I'm sure, like I said, somewhere in the end user license agreement, before you even deposit a cent, you agree that the hash rate being the product of somebody else's hardware, i.e. Roger Ver and Bitcoin.com's, that ultimately they would have ultimate discretion to act in the best interests of both the network and the coin, as they saw. Now, some of you might wince and some of you might be pissed at that idea, but think about it this way. If they were your miners, you would have which variant of Bitcoin Cash you could be mining. But no, instead of dedicating the funds to your own hash rate, you shifted the responsibility over to Bitcoin.com and Roger Ver. Now, should you really expect that a different result. If it were your hardware, you could be dedicating it how you saw fit. But it's somebody else's hardware. So ultimately, they can utilize it how they see fit. And maybe even against your objections. But you know what you can do? You can withdraw your funds from there, right? Just quit supporting it entirely. The hash rate's not really going to go away because they're probably not going to turn off the miners. And you could dedicate that money to buying your own miners and deciding which variant of Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever cryptocurrency you like. You could be choosing that for yourself. You know, just because pools exist doesn't mean that you need to rent their hash, you know, rent from them. It's somebody else's hardware. You know, we've gone through this several times in Bitcoin where the managers of the hardware, the owners of the hardware rather, would make decisions that were maybe not in the best interest of users or not according to the will of users. And the users just stuck with it anyway. And that's a responsibility that you're handing off to somebody else. You know, it's kind of that centralization thing that we keep talking about, right? You put it to a trusted third party, and ultimately it is under their discretion. So, don't cry. Get even. Go on some marketplace where you can trust that you're going to be getting new hardware if you actually give them money, and buy the hardware that will support the coin that you like. You know, do a little bit of homework, hunt around, find out what other people are using to mine it, and say, all right, well, not only do I want to keep up with these people, but I want to exceed them. So maybe I got to put a little bit of capital investment to it. And then start planning ahead from there. You know, you should be looking at your rollover rate, you know, how, and also have an exit plan for your hardware. You know, it's not enough to just buy the hardware, put it to use. At one point or another, it is going to become deprecated, and you are going to have to be thinking about a secondary market to get it to, where it can either be recycled or just reutilized for a lower coin or something like that. But you got to be thinking about that beforehand, before you even buy a miner. That's the kind of plans you need to be making if you intend to be in this game for any duration of time. But you got to remember, it's not just about immediate profits. You don't have to market sell your coins when you actually do mine them. You know, you can hold them for a time when there's better market conditions for you to sell into. You know, because you do have to be looking out for your own interests. And that's the name of this game, is self-interested operator, not trusted third-party provider. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And I've been wanting to put in some Tool. Let's put it in. Schism. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Rollins' band with Divine. Yeah, I would have let it keep going, but I realized that we're quite a few songs beyond normal at this point, so I do not want to. Anyway, got a little bit of crowbar going on in the background. That stuff is usually beastly. And as we were talking about, we already covered the hash rate falling, and what I think that's probably the bigger driver behind the decline in Bitcoin's price than anything. But there have been so much attention being dedicated to Bitcoin Cash and what's going on there that everybody's been kind of like ignoring what's going on Bitcoin. Now, I took the liberty of checking the percentage of transactions that were SegWit, and I expected this to be kind of an attrition thing. And, you know, Jihan Wu, when he cut off support for SegWit, he kind of showed us exactly what would happen with regard to the fees. They went up. And during this time when so much of the Bitcoin hash rate is talking about going over to Bitcoin Cash, at least for just tomorrow and maybe a day or so afterward, the number of SegWit transactions, like I said, has been going up. So the people that were mining non-SegWit transactions exclusively have pretty much been slowing down their traffic. You know, they haven't been doing as much transacting, or mining, that is. And I've been speculating that I think they are going to be coming over to Bitcoin Cash, at least for the fork. That's just my thesis. And I've seen some evidence on my Twitter feed that there is still hash rate waiting on the sidelines, waiting to throw down in this whole competition. And I think it's very interesting. But nonetheless, like I said, there's been so much attention on that nobody's been really paying attention to Bitcoin until, of course, today when the fucking price tanked and everybody's like, oh, what happened to my Bitcoin? I lost all kind of money. Yeah, that happens. Anyway, here it is. Got this article here on BitcoinExchangeGuide.com. Bitcoin's Lightning Network, LN, sees key milestone in 4,000 nodes and counting. This is on by them, the Bitcoin Exchange Guide News team. This is authored November 15th, 2018. So apparently they are time travelers. The Lightning Network is Bitcoin's second layer. And that's kind of a misnomer. It's kind of like not really Bitcoins at all. It's kind of an imposed second layer on top of Bitcoin. Anyway, continuing on. It was designed to facilitate faster and cheaper transactions via third parties. The network has been growing since its launch and recently reached a key milestone when it reached and surpassed 4,000 nodes, bringing its capacity to an all-time high. The figures, the latest news has been confirmed by 1ML, Bitcoin's monitoring resource dedicated to tracking the Lightning Network's progress. According to 1ML, the Lightning Network had 4,026 as of November 13th. Of these, 2,910 nodes are public. The developers also speculate that there could be many more hidden nodes. Combined, all of these nodes give the platform an optimal capacity of 112.5 Bitcoin. However, this figure recently rose to 118 Bitcoin on 13th of November. These figures translate to about $743,000. Not today, they don't. It is important to note that the largest node on the platform has a capacity of just under 16 Bitcoin. This is a testament to the network's affordability. What? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, a growing reputation. The Lightning Network is already active on Litecoin and several other tokens. Many other tokens are also taking note of its progress and planning to integrate it into their platforms. Most recently, Stellar announced plans are underway to integrate the network into its platform by the end of the year. The company made this announcement on a recent blog post. It was also keen to mention that it was impressed by the recent milestones and developments on the network. Interestingly, Stellar has also been making strides. It recently rose to the top 5 cryptocurrencies based on market capitalization. Its developers are optimistic that this trajectory will hold and expect Lightning Network to boost the coin's long-term security and scalability. Yeah, whatever. Early stages of development. The Lightning Network has come a long way in a short time. However, the platform is still in its early stages of development. Interestingly, Lightning Network's developers still consider the platform an experimental concept. The developers are still working on the platform's security and basic infrastructure for robustness. Other factors such as ease of use and user experience come second and will only be considered if and when the platform proves successful. However, it seems that it already has been, considering the recent milestone. Lightning Network's recent development has prompted the development team to consider broader developments. Okay, put development in there again, dude, please. This much was confirmed during a recent interview with Alex Bosworth, the CEO of Yalls.org, a payment gateway, and a corresponding developer for the Lightning Network. Mr. Bosworth noted that the team of developers was considering making changes and upgrades to hidden destinations, multipath payments, and dual-funded channels, among other features. The list of changes come to 30, and more changes will be implemented in the near future. Conclusion: Bitcoin's Lightning Network is making strides as it forges ahead to become a full-fledged exchange platform. Its most recent milestone, surpassing 4,000 nodes, is proof of its potential and capabilities. It may still be considered an experimental undertaking by its developers, but this recent milestone may have sealed its fate as a permanent platform. The team of developers is already making plans to implement 30 changes and upgrades. See, that doesn't give me any confidence. That they're making all kinds of adaptations and changes to it. I'm going to have to do more investigation into it, because honestly, I don't want this to be like some sort of FUD on the Lightning Network. I'm not going to FUD it. I mean, people are dedicating their time and effort to it. Honestly, I don't see being off-chain as the way out of this. I see that today should have been a reminder that putting your work on top of other people's work is probably not such a good idea. Because they could decide to change the work, and then you're fucked. What if a really big contingent of the mining that's handling Bitcoin right now just says, you know what, this hash worm might be kind of profitable. Let's go over there. What's that going to do to the Lightning Network? The Lightning Network is still dependent on on-chain transactions. So, getting into and out of a payment channel might be a little bit interesting coming up. And I think that people tend to forget the nature of the network, exactly why it exists. It's to maintain the fidelity of funds. And I think it's really interesting that we should be seeing this kind of confluence of events at this time. It's nothing that we haven't experienced here in crypto before, and I don't think the result will be that this ends or this becomes irreparable or anything like that. I think that we are going to move forward. We're going to learn, and we are going to move forward. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Falling on your face is still forward movement. That's all there is to it. And like I said, this is probably the most accountable means of transacting monetary value that has ever existed. We can actually look at the record and say, you know what, this is kind of where we fucked up. This was the change we made at that time. Maybe we should roll back to that, or make a BIP that takes that out. Something to consider. And I think that another thing that people tend to forget and haven't been talking about as much as they should is central points of failure. We sling around that word decentralization, but how many of you who say that word on any kind of regular basis are actually mining? Probably not all that many of you. Why? How can I tell that? Because everybody's freaking out about what Bitcoin.com is doing with their pool. And what Jihan is doing with his miners. Why are you worried about what other people are doing with their hardware? That's none of your concern. What your concern should be is what you're doing with your hardware. That's your concern. Anyway, let's get into this. I got this article here on CoinDesk. After the fork, how competing Bitcoin Cash blockchains might wage war. And this is by Rachel Rose O'Leary. And traditionally we don't do middle names here, but it happened. So no penis. And this is authored November 15th, 2018. So again, time traveler. Gotta love it. This is authored at 5 o'clock UTC. Bitcoin Cash's ongoing war of words is set to reach a conclusion today. That's when a planned technical update and an ongoing disagreement over the proposed code changes may lead to major Bitcoin Cash implementations. Two major Bitcoin Cash implementations, Bitcoin ABC and Bitcoin SV, to split into separate blockchains. In the days prior to the activation, rising contention from both sides has culminated in what has been termed as a hash war, as mining pools ramp up their computing power to show support for the various implementations. But rather than a future in which the two versions of Bitcoin Cash live in harmony, there's a degree of concern that under a scenario in which two distinct blockchains emerge, that same mining power could be wielded as a weapon against one of the networks. Quote, an SV miner can legally kill off a chain. That's the miner's right. That is what Bitcoin is. Craig Wright, the controversial chief scientist behind nChain, the company that leads the Bitcoin SV implementation, tweeted, hash power, the computing resources committed by miners towards securing a blockchain, has been fluctuating between both camps in the days prior to the activation, though all signs point to Bitcoin SV proponents having the upper hand on this front. Because of Bitcoin Cash's underlying architecture, a 51% dominance in hash power will allow Bitcoin SV to launch attacks against the minority chain, and Wright has suggested that such action isn't off the table. As such, according to Peter Risen, the chief scientist of Bitcoin Unlimited, a Bitcoin Cash software implementation that supports Bitcoin ABC, the upcoming hash war is a test of what is known as Bitcoin's underlying security assumption, dubbed as the honest majority. Detailed in the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, the honest majority assumption is based on the premise that security is only guaranteed if 51% or a majority of nodes are behaving non-maliciously. Quote, the security of blockchains comes from economic incentives, not from math. We cross our fingers and hope that a group of attacker nodes will choose to play by the rules. Maybe they won't, Risen said, adding, quote, the coming hash battle is putting Satoshi's assumption to the test. The fork attacks. In effect, Wright sees the upcoming split in terms of Bitcoin's longest chain rule, the underlying Bitcoin consensus mechanism that defaults to the longest chain in the event of multiple blocks being found simultaneously. When applied to a blockchain split, what this means essentially means, oh dude, come on girl, means is a fight to the death between competing chains, where the last one standing would be considered the, quote, true Bitcoin Cash by nodes. For example, both implementations have declined to add so-called, quote, replay protection, or code that allows funds to be safely spent when a split occurs. Neither Bitcoin SV nor Bitcoin ABC have implemented transaction replay protection, as the intention is for only one chain to survive. nChain, the software company behind Bitcoin SV, wrote in a press release published earlier this month. This means that without special precautions, users could lose funds while transacting on a split chain. Similarly, hackers can exploit the vulnerability to extract funds from exchanges. Quote, users potentially stand to lose money because of this decision, Chris Pacia, a developer for OpenBazaar, told CoinDesk, adding, quote, not adding replay protection is a dick move. Yes, I would have to agree. At the time of the writing, the prevailing hash rate is showing a preference for the SV side. If the preference continues, there's a host of ways that Bitcoin SV could try to keep ABC from operating. Empty blocks. For example, SV could mine empty blocks that do not contain transactions. Combined with the majority hash rate, this could result in user transactions being rejected from the chain, essentially pushing the blockchain into stasis. According to Ryzen, the cost of this attack, quote, is nearly zero for SV, assuming they have the majority hash power. For the honest minority, however, the cost is extremely high. Quote, they spend a lot of resources to find a block, only to have it orphaned and lose the 12.5 Bitcoin Cash block reward. The honest miners might give up, Ryzen explained. Alternatively, the miner could simply include useless or, quote, junk transactions in the blockchain, which would have a similar effect to empty blocks. But according to Chris Pacia, this approach also, quote, forces people to validate and store all the junk transactions. If it's got a fee associated with it, it's not a junk transaction. Double spend. Equally, having a 51% majority means that SV attackers could perform a so-called, quote, double spend attack, in which an attacker prints non-existent funds from an exchange. A notorious attack within the cryptocurrency industry, such an attack requires the majority of hash power to function. Given the hash power, a miner can produce blocks in secret and that contain false transactions before injecting the transactions into the blockchain. Still, in this case, Ryzen depicted this attack as one of the least likely outcomes of the Bitcoin Cash fork, because unlike hostile activity between competing chains, double spends are, quote, blatantly criminal. I would have to agree. Satoshi's shotgun. And there are other attacks that could be launched between the blockchains as well. According to Pacia, it is also possible for an attacker with the majority hash rate to let the ABC chain grow before using the majority hash power to override blocks. Quote, this would cause users, especially exchanges, to lose millions of dollars as they would see their transactions get reversed. Wright is threatened to do this, Pacia said. Quote, additionally, Ryzen listed poison block attacks, denial of service attacks, network partition attacks, and zero-day exploits among the kinds of activity that could arise between warring factions. For example, rumors have been building ahead of the release about something that has been nicknamed, quote, Satoshi's shotgun, which would inject large volumes of spam transactions into the competing chain. Spam transactions would flood the blockchain, slowing the time that it takes for standard transactions to be confirmed. Quote, we saw Satoshi's shotgun in action on November 10th. Apparently it generated up to 800 transactions per second, Ryzen said. The fair fight. Continuing, Ryzen explained that a further possibility, what he calls a, quote, fair fight, in which SV would simply prevent the changes that ABC intends to make from activating. Another attack that requires the majority of hash rate in order to function, SV could mine blocks that are valid to both implementations, but would punish miners that attempt to activate ABC changes by simply refusing to include them in a block. Quote, "This way SV could try to bleed the ABC loyal miners dry until they give up on the changes," Ryzen said. Such an attack would prevent ABC from activating and ensure that SV becomes dominant on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. According to Ryzen, this is the most sensible and cost-efficient form of attack, but also, quote, "probably the most technically difficult to implement. It's only really a good option if they actually care about Bitcoin Cash. If SV wants to destroy Bitcoin Cash, then it would not be a good option," Ryzen said. And while it's unclear how Thursday's hard fork will play out, according to Ryzen, such attacks are, quote, "exciting because they allow blockchains to be battle-tested in more robust scenarios." Quote, "People think you just make a blockchain and it becomes secure by mathematical pixie dust. It doesn't," Ryzen said, concluding, quote, "We don't know if blockchains work. That might sound odd, but it's true." No, we know they work when people are working together to make them work. What we don't know is if they still work in a contentious and adversarial environment. And that is the part of that that's being tested. And you know, it's just a reminder, though, of how dependent you really can be on these people and what you can expect them to be maintaining for you. You know, if you're not backing your own shit up with your own mining equipment, and I mean miners, I'm not talking about your silly node, I'm talking about a fucking miner. If you're not broadcasting that shit yourself, the chances of it being included in a block are that much lower. That's all there is to it. You know, I think this is one of the problems that I had with a lot of Andreas's talks and some of his advice was that he was advising against mining, and I'm like, dude, why? Why would you advise people against mining? Yes, it costs you electricity, but yes, it maintains your sovereignty of your voice on the network. And that's true regardless of how big the blocks are, how many miners are on the network. You communicating your transactions directly to the network is as sovereign as you will ever be. You know, and so the idea that we should rely on the miners, the big time miners that have dedicated a shit ton of money to their mining equipment, that we should put it all on the backs of them, and we should just ignore our responsibility as a user and give up our voice to a mining pool that has their own hardware that they're mining with. You know, that to me is the real sovereignty of Bitcoin, not you've got your keys and so you can spend them. Yeah, you know what? If the fucking Bitcoin network stays at 1 megabyte after this shit, it's going to cost a lot more to transact your Bitcoin than it's going to be worth. And so when you're looking at it in terms of it takes me $22 even on a goddamn Lightning Network transaction, if you're the one that's establishing the payment channel on the Bitcoin blockchain and upfronting the funds for it, you are paying a miner fee associated with that transaction. And that 1 megabyte is going to get really fucking crowded. You heard that article, 4,000 nodes. That's enough to support a decent amount of traffic. And like I said, they're going to have transactions establishing payment channels and transactions terminating payment channels. And that's true regardless of how else you want to do the back end of shit and stack shit and have your abstractions of value that you're transacting instead of Bitcoin and whatever else you're doing. There's a transaction to initiate it, and a transaction to terminate it. And there's only so much space in a 1 megabyte block, even going by block weight, to facilitate that action. And so when you're looking at it from that perspective, you cannot depend on the rest of the network to be maintaining or doing your transactions for you. Because again, you're going to experience where you're not going to be able to transact on the network. You're going to have to depend on a third party to facilitate the transactions for you, even hosting your own node. But I think this is one of the problems that's going to straighten out the whole idea of Lightning Network. I think Lightning Network is really cool for doing something on your side of it. Like if it's something that you're just switching the monetary value around on your own side, within in-house, based on known and existing reserves, right? You're confirming those reserves on the Bitcoin blockchain daily. But you need to flex them from one place or another inside your network. Maybe it's an exchange, maybe it's a really high volume retail outlet, and you can't be affording to fucking transact on the Bitcoin blockchain several times during the day. You just need to do it once, and then maybe you'll cash it out in a week or cash it out in a month or whatever. But that's something that doing it in-house, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But when we're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about the means to transact the value from person to person without a third-party intermediary. So when you're talking about the Lightning Network and off-chain transactions being the primary medium, you're talking about invariably there being trusted third parties that are facilitating this, whether they be the holders of a significant amount of Bitcoin on the network to facilitate specifically to facilitate transactions with, or some other entity. But yeah, that's where I'm going with that. It's just stacking your shit on top of other people's shit is kind of silly, especially when there are currencies like Verge that they have such a fast confirmation time that even if you did have to wait real time for the transaction to clear, it would take you 30 seconds. 30 seconds to do something that still, regardless of whether or not it's on a blockchain or whatever, Visa does in 3 to 5 business days. And it's even longer than that when you go to the international market. But the point being is there are already tools that do everything you can do with the Lightning Network on chain. So with that in mind, why would you want to involve trusted third parties in your cryptocurrency transactions, especially if you don't have to? This is where the viability of even smaller cap altcoins is going to prove out in the long run. That because maybe they don't experience the same kind of issues that Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash do, that they might be more stable mediums of exchange for people to use. And I think that's really going to prove out over the longer term, is that this little bump in the road, it's going to show us what our real interests are in Bitcoin. And how people respond to it over the next couple months is going to show, I think, the general trend for the next 2 years. And personally, I think that most people are going to be taking their power back and starting to mine again. That to me is just an inevitable thing. We're seeing the result of entrusting third parties with our money, with our hash power, with our trust. We've always known this, and if we came into this because of the 2009 crisis, and for one reason or another, we were fully aware of the market effects of depending on trusted third parties. And I don't think this lesson is quite etched into the mind of everybody yet, but it will be, one way or another. And yeah, I want to go ahead and throw back down into some music. but I'm not entirely certain of where to go with it. We're going to be a little bit shorter this time just because we are kind of running out of time for the evening. But I haven't been playing any Rivers of Nile. We've got to fix that. A Home here on Coin Metal. And that was Gizmachi with The Answer. As if there could be one answer for all, right? Anyway, I wanted to round this out with a little thing I found here on BitcoinMagazine.com. This by Andrew Nelson, staff writer. This was authored November 14th, 2018 at 2:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very precise. Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes, penis. IMF head makes case for central bank digital currencies in recent speech. With contributing reporting by Jimmy Aki. Christine Lagarde, head of the International Monetary Fund, suggested a new course of action for central banks around the world: turn their fiat currencies digital. The IMF chair gave a speech at the Singapore FinTech Festival on November 14th titled Winds of Change, the New Case for Digital Currency. In it, Lagarde stated, quote, "I believe we should consider the possibility to issue digital currency. There may be a role for the state to supply money to the digital economy." She continued to laud the benefits of cryptocurrency payments, calling them, quote, immediate, safe, cheap, and potentially semi-autonomous, and saying that central banks should consider issuing digital assets so they can, quote, retain a sure footing in payments. Her speech comes 2 days after the IMF released a research paper that highlights many of the talking points Lagarde hits on, titled, quote, Casting Light on Central Bank Digital Currencies. It details some of the benefits a state may see if it decides to issue digital currencies, including financial inclusion, consumer protection, and privacy in payments. State-sponsored digital currencies is not a new idea. Lagarde herself pointed out that the central banking authorities of Canada, China, Sweden, and Uruguay are already considering the notion. However, she urged central banks to support digital currencies as a premise of the future, stating such currencies could, quote, satisfy public policy goals such as financial inclusion, security and consumer protection, and provide what the private sector cannot: privacy in payments. That's complete bullshit, Christine. We're already doing it, and without you or the central banks. Continuing on. It should be noted that the IMF chair referred to cryptocurrencies throughout her speech. The chair espoused a nuanced view of crypto that, while not wholly supportive, showed the advancements of the industry were part of the IMF's new outlook. Quote, for their part, cryptocurrencies seek to anchor trust in technology, so long as they are transparent, and, if you are tech-savvy, you might trust their services. Still, I'm not entirely convinced, Lagarde stated. For Lagarde, cryptocurrencies still require, quote, proper regulation of these entities, so they will remain a pillar of trust. Yeah, we don't need to remain a pillar of trust for you. We only need to remain a pillar of trust for the participants on the network. If you choose to stack your shit on top of what we're already placing our trust in, that is your fault. Continuing on. While the IMF's view at this time is clearly for digitization of fiat currencies by central banks rather than through cryptocurrencies, it put out a paper to that effect. Lagarde asks these fundamental questions of central banking authorities. Quote, should we go further? Beyond regulation, should the state remain an active player in the market for money? No. Should it fill the void left by the retreat of cash? The positive aspects of Lagarde's speech is in contrast to the IMF's opposition to the Marshall Islands plan to float a sovereign digital currency. Criticizing the island's decision, the IMF stated that it feared the island's currency could be used by crime syndicates or businesses running illegitimate operations. Yeah, whatever. In other words, doing so without cutting them in on it. That would make it, quote, illegal. Yeah. I think that's the redefinition of criminal activity that is going on here, is that it's not good enough to simply point at something and saying, hey, we're not getting a cut from that, it's illegal. That doesn't work anymore. The question is, are the transactions valid? And is the money being transferred with any validity from one person to another? If that can be demonstrated on a global level by being able to examine a transaction as it goes through the network and observe a transaction as it goes through the network, then really there is no trust being placed in the fact that it's actually happening. We can see it happening. It's not something where the bank is telling us, oh yeah, that happened. Meanwhile, it's still got another 3 to 5 business days in a question mark state on their ledgers. We don't have that level of liability in cryptocurrencies, and I think this is a point that a lot of people mistake about what's going on here. Eyes on the prize, kids. This is what we're competing against. We're competing against people that want to be top-down dictating to us what our cryptocurrencies or what our currencies are worth, and having the ability to redefine them at their leisure. Now, we still face these challenges within cryptocurrencies because a lot of you are still mistaking what they're meant to do and why they're meant to do it. What they're actually replacing in your daily life. And when more people take the reality to heart, that it's your interests that you're serving by participating in cryptocurrencies as opposed to the IMF's interest or the Federal Reserve's interest or the Bank of America's interest, any of these entities, it's none of their business what your business is. And Christine Lagarde is right to question whether or not the central banks or the IMF even have a role in the future of money. You know, I think that we are still operating on a matter of momentum, and that for the moment, fiat currencies are still facilitating the transfers that we need them to. And to their credit, I've got to say, the banks that I've dealt with have been very, very fastidious to be playing catch-up with us. In a process that, up until recently, took about 9 to 10 business days, is now taking me about 48 hours. And that, to me, is a demonstration of what our impact on the economy has been and on the participants in digital finance has been. But we're not done. We are not done. Not by any measure. Just because the banks are using quote-unquote blockchain technology in the background and facilitating faster transactions, we're still having to rely on them as a trusted entity in our transactions. And that's a promise that Bitcoin meant to fulfill on. That the network itself and the participants in that network would replace the need for a third party, a trusted third entity in our transactions from one peer to another. And this promise has been fulfilled, but not for enough people. And I believe increasing the block size on the Bitcoin blockchain is the way out of that. I don't happen to believe that entrusting trusted third parties to that part is going to get us out of this issue. It's just going to change the third party involved. And from what I can tell, the third party is the same old party as the new party. I mean, it's the same people. They're just not going to be doing it with fiat currencies. They're going to be doing it with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And so in this way, if we decide to hand it off, hand the processing of transactions off to this quote-unquote trusted third party, I predict that within a very short period of time, we'll end up right where we are today, where one of their decisions, whether it be some imposition of a tax layer or licensing, or the taxing regime and licensing regimes being too onerous to try to adhere to, and so on and so forth. We're back where we really started. Until we can break free of that idea that we need to be relying on a trusted third party to be defining markets for us, we're going to continue running into this issue, because we don't all value money the same way. And that's not going to change, whether or not we're talking about Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency. We don't all value all money the same way. Some of us have certain use cases that make certain money better for us than other money. But the key is us being able to use it and participate in it in an ad hoc, at-will manner. This is one of the promises that Bitcoin made that not enough people take seriously. And I believe over this next year, that's something that we are going to be rectifying. I don't believe that the reliance on third parties will be where we're at in the end of this year. So with that in mind, I would like to close out this episode. We will be back again on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want you all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. As far as our last dance, I have not actually selected anything. I'm going to have to quickly pick it. And, let's see here. Yeah, that could be it. But that's not going to be it. I've got a better song. No, not that one. That one's too short, because we need something a little bit longer. We got a little bit time left. Oh, yeah. And until Friday, you'll be able to find me on Twitter and on Facebook, and also in the Discord chat room and the Telegram chat room as well. Also, you can find my previous episodes on YouTube. Like and subscribe, please. And we'll be back again on Friday. And so, without further ado, our last dance. It's going to be Disturbed. Down with the Sickness. Here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and you all have an excellent evening.